retainer sacrifice, serving beyond death. We begin our list with a death that required no pyramid, no blade, and no crowd, just loyalty taken to its most terrifying extreme. When a great Aztec king or noble died, his servants, retainers, and sometimes his own wives didn't just mourn his passing. They followed him into it. The reasoning was simple. A powerful ruler needed attendance in the afterlife just as he had in this one. So the selected retainers were brought forward one by one. Some were strangled with cord, others had their throats cut cleanly. No grand ceremony, no cosmic symbolism, just a quiet, efficient death. Their bodies were then carefully arranged around their master's remains, still positioned as though attending him. Buried together, bound together, inseparable even in death. What makes this particularly haunting is that many of these servants never resisted. They had been so thoroughly conditioned into their roles that serving their master in death felt no different from serving him in life. They didn't die as enemies or criminals. They died simply because their master did. And in the Aztec Empire, that was reason enough. Suffocation in ash, the laws of Texcoco. Retainer sacrifice was quiet and swift. This one was slower, darker, and far more suffocating, in every sense of the word. The Aztec Empire wasn't just built on religion and warfare. It was governed by one of the strictest legal codes of the ancient world. In the city of Texcoco, breaking certain laws didn't just get you imprisoned, it got you buried alive. The condemned was taken to an open area where an enormous heap of ash had been prepared. He was forced down into it and completely buried. Ash packed tightly around the body, over the limbs, over the chest, over the face, every gap filled, every breath made harder than the last. Unlike a blade or a flame, ash gave no dramatic death, no spectacle, just a slow, invisible suffocation where every inhale became shallower than the last. The chest would burn, the lungs would convulse, and all around the condemned was nothing but thick, silent, suffocating gray closing in from every direction. No ceremony, no ritual, no crowd cheering. Just a person, buried breathing, and forgotten. What separated this from every religious sacrifice on this list was its cold, legal precision. This wasn't done for the gods, it was done for the law. And in Texcoco, the law showed absolutely no mercy. Death by stoning, Aztec justice. Suffocation in ash was silent and hidden. This one was loud, public, and carried out by the very community the condemned had lived in. In the Aztec Empire, adultery wasn't just a personal betrayal, it was a legal crime. And once proven, the punishment was immediate and non-negotiable: death by public stoning. The condemned was brought to an open public space where the entire community had already gathered. No elaborate ritual, no grand ceremony, just a person, a crowd, and a pile of stones. The stoning began. The stones weren't large enough to kill instantly. They were small enough to be thrown repeatedly. The first strike split skin and raised deep bruising. Bones closest to the surface fractured early. The condemned would fall, but the stones kept coming. Broken ribs, crushed joints, internal bleeding building silently beneath the surface. It was slow, it was agonizing, and it was completely intentional. But here's the detail that makes this truly chilling. The crowd wasn't an angry mob acting on emotion. They were ordinary citizens, neighbors, and community members fulfilling a legal obligation. Calm, methodical, following the law to the letter. In the Aztec Empire, justice didn't just punish the condemned, it made the entire community the executioner, and nobody refused. Gladiatorial combat, Tezcatlipoca. Public stoning was carried out by ordinary citizens. This one was carried out by the most elite and deadly warriors the Aztec Empire had ever produced. Tezcatlipoca was the god of the night sky, sorcery, and destiny. And one of the ways the Aztecs honored him was through a form of gladiatorial combat, but not the fair kind. A captured warrior would be tethered to a large sacrificial stone, unable to move more than a few feet in any direction. He was handed a weapon, but not a real one. His club was decorated with feathers, instead of the razor-sharp obsidian blades that armed his opponents. Then up to 4 of the Aztec Empire's most elite warriors, fully armed jaguar knights and eagle warriors, were sent in to fight him one by one. The captive fought, knowing his weapon could barely scratch them, while theirs could kill him instantly. Every dodge, every swing, every desperate attempt at survival was nothing more than entertainment for the crowd watching below. Some accounts suggest that if a captive somehow defeated all 4 warriors, he could earn his freedom. But that almost never happened. The entire fight was designed with one outcome in mind. It wasn't combat. It wasn't justice. It was a performance of bravery, carefully dressed up as an execution. And the crowd loved every second of it. The fire sacrifice, Huehueteotl and Xiuhtecuhtli. Gladiatorial combat gave the victim at least a fighting chance. This one gave him absolutely nothing, except fire. The Aztecs feared many things, but nothing terrified them more than fire turning against them, because Huehueteotl, the ancient fire deity, wasn't just worshipped, he was desperately appeased. During the festival of Ixcali, a grand feast was prepared. But as the night reached its peak, the captives were brought forward and thrown directly into a massive roaring fire. Alive, the flames consumed them immediately, burning flesh, cracking bones, filling the air with thick smoke. But the priest didn't let them die in the fire. That would have been too merciful. Just before death could take them, the captives were dragged back out of the inferno, scorched, barely breathing, bodies destroyed beyond recognition. And while they were still alive, the priest drove a blade into their chests and tore out their hearts. Half burned, half alive, completely conscious. But every 52 years, the fire god demanded something even more theatrical. During the new fire ceremony, every single fire across Tenochtitlan was extinguished. The entire city went completely dark. Thousands waited in absolute silence, genuinely uncertain whether the world would survive the night. A single man was then sacrificed at the summit of a volcano, and in the open cavity where his heart had been, priests lit a ceremonial flame, carried down the mountain to relight every sacred fire in the city. One man burned, an entire civilization reignited. The Flaying, Xipe Totec. The fire sacrifice destroyed the body from the outside. This one stripped it, literally, from the very surface of the skin. Xipe Totec was the god of agriculture and renewal, and the way the Aztecs honored him was perhaps the most visually disturbing ritual in their entire religious calendar. It started 40 days before the actual sacrifice. One victim was selected from each ward across Tenochtitlan, dressed in the god's costume, fed, housed, and treated as a living representation of Xipe Totec himself. For 40 days he lived among ordinary people as a walking deity, celebrated, respected, and worshipped. Then the festival arrived. The victims were taken to the temple, pinned down, and their hearts torn out in the traditional manner. But the real horror came immediately after death. The skin was carefully peeled from the entire body in one complete piece. That skin was then worn by priests and warriors who pulled the human hide over their own bodies like a suit, dead hands dangling over living hands, a stretched human face pulled over a living face. They walked through the streets wearing it. They fought mock battles in it. They collected offerings from citizens in it. For 20 days, they lived inside another person's decomposing skin until it rotted completely off their bodies. The Aztecs saw this as deeply symbolic, the dead skin representing the old earth, and what emerged underneath representing fresh new growth. To everyone else, it was a walking nightmare dressed up as a harvest prayer. The heart sacrifice, Huitzilopochtli. The Flaying stripped the body after death. This one tore it apart while the victim was still completely conscious. The Aztecs believed their sun god, Huitzilopochtli, was locked in an eternal cosmic battle every single day, fighting off darkness just to rise again each morning. And the only thing powerful enough to fuel that battle was a still beating human heart. The moment a warrior was captured alive in battle, his fate was already sealed. He would be dragged up the towering steps of the Templo Mayor, the massive pyramid at the heart of Tenochtitlan. At the summit, 4 priests pinned him down onto the Texcoco, the sacrificial stone, bending his spine so sharply backward that his chest stretched tight and completely exposed. He couldn't move. He couldn't fight. All he could do was stare up at the open sky. The 5th priest stepped forward with an obsidian blade, sharper than any metal of that era, and drove it beneath the ribcage with a single practiced cut. Then he reached inside, wrapped his hand around the still beating heart, and tore it free from the chest cavity. The victim was likely still conscious in that final moment, experiencing a hollow, catastrophic emptiness as his own heart was raised toward the sun, still pulsing, still beating. The body was then hurled down the pyramid steps. The warrior who captured him claimed the remains, distributed to nobles, consumed in ritual feasts, the skull eventually mounted on the public skull rack for the entire city to see. During the dedication of the Templo Mayor in 1487, this wasn't done once or twice. Historians estimate thousands were sacrificed in exactly this manner over just 4 days. But that story deserves its own entry entirely. The Tears of Tlaloc. The heart sacrifice was brutal, violent, and swift. This one was slower, quieter, and involved the most innocent victims on this entire list. Tlaloc was the rain god, and in an empire built entirely on agriculture, rain wasn't just weather, it was survival. No rain meant no crops. No crops meant starvation. Keeping Tlaloc satisfied wasn't optional, it was everything. And Tlaloc had one very specific requirement. He didn't want warriors. He didn't want nobles. He wanted the tears of young children. Because the Aztecs believed a child's tears were the most powerful symbol of water and rain. The more a child cried, the better the rains would come. So the priests made absolutely sure they cried. Children, some as young as infants, were selected from communities across the empire. They were dressed elaborately, decorated in the colors of Tlaloc, and paraded through the city. But on the way to the sacrifice, the priests deliberately hurt them. They pinched them. They inflicted pain specifically to provoke louder, more desperate crying. Some accounts suggest fingernails were forcibly torn out during the procession. The more tears that fell, the louder the crowd celebrated. Every sob was a raindrop promised by the god. Archaeologists excavating the Great Pyramid of Tenochtitlan found remains of at least 42 children buried at Tlaloc's shrine, many showing clear signs of serious injuries inflicted before death. The violence wasn't incidental. The pain wasn't accidental. In this ritual, a child's suffering wasn't a consequence of the sacrifice. It was the entire point. The chosen one. Tezcatlipoca. The children of Tlaloc never knew what was coming. This victim knew exactly what was coming, every single day for an entire year. Tezcatlipoca was the god of night, sorcery, and destiny, and once a year, he demanded the most psychologically devastating sacrifice on this entire list. The most handsome and physically perfect young man available was selected from among the captives. From that moment, his life transformed completely. He was dressed in the finest clothes, adorned with jewels, and treated as a living god walking on earth. He was given 4 beautiful women as companions. Citizens bowed to him in the streets. He ate the finest food and enjoyed every comfort imaginable. For an entire year, he lived better than most Aztec nobles ever would. But every single morning, he woke up knowing exactly how his year would end. On the final day, a great feast was held in Tezcatlipoca's honor. The young man ate, celebrated, and then quietly rose from the table. He walked to the base of the pyramid and began climbing, alone, unforced, and completely aware. As he ascended, he broke his flute, the instrument he had played throughout the city all year long, shattering it deliberately on each step on the way up. At the summit, he surrendered himself to the priests without resistance. His heart was removed, and somewhere below in the city, a new, perfect young man was already being selected for next year. No chains, no struggle, no escape attempt. Just a year of paradise carefully constructed to deliver one man peacefully and willingly to his own death. The Aztecs didn't just take lives. Sometimes they spent a whole year tenderly, deliberately preparing them. The mass sacrifice of 1487. Every entry on this list involved individual suffering. This one involved an entire civilization's capacity for organized, industrial-scale death. And nothing in the ancient world comes close to what happened here. In 1487, Emperor Huitzilopochtli ordered the reconsecration of the newly expanded Great Pyramid of Tenochtitlan. And to mark the occasion, he didn't want a modest ceremony. He wanted something the gods, and the entire world, would never forget. He got it. Prisoners of war had been gathered from across the empire for months in advance. Tens of thousands of captured warriors, slaves, and civilians, all brought to Tenochtitlan and held specifically for this moment. When the 4 days began, 4 lines of prisoners stretched from the pyramid in 4 different directions, reaching so far into the city that witnesses reported the lines disappearing beyond the horizon. The killing began at sunrise and didn't stop until after dark. Then it started again the next morning. At the summit, priests worked in rotating shifts, because even they grew exhausted. Each victim was pinned to the sacrificial stone, chest cracked open with an obsidian blade, heart torn out and raised toward the sky, the body hurled down the steps. By the second day, the pyramid steps were so completely drenched in blood that priests were slipping as they worked. Bodies piled up faster than they could be removed. The smell of blood reportedly reached villages miles outside the city. Conservative estimates suggest around 10,000 people were killed. Some Aztec records place the number as high as 80,400 over just 4 days. That would mean one person killed every single second, around the clock, for 4 straight days without stopping. No battlefield in the ancient world produced death at this speed. No plague moved this deliberately. No natural disaster was this organized. This wasn't just the most painful death on this list. It was the most systematically, efficiently, and unapologetically mass-produced death in the entire ancient world. And when it was finally over, Emperor Huitzilopochtli looked out over his blood-soaked pyramid, turned to his priests, and considered it a complete success. The Aztec Empire is gone, but the suffering it created will never be forgotten. Thanks for watching.